We are live on YouTube now, just so everybody's aware.
That's good. Thank you, Karen. Question on logistics. We have the same dial-in for this meeting as we do for the downtown committee, correct?
The same what?
Same, the Zoom call-in.
Yeah, it's all in the same meeting. Yep. So this will go from the EDA, will go right into the downtown committee meeting directly after. So we're not leaving this room. Everybody will stay here. Sorry about that.
Good evening, everybody. I'll get started here in just a moment. Not quite to 5:30, and I know we've got some still connecting to sound, so give us just a moment. Okay, we are right at 5:30, and I see we've got a quorum of the EDA online here. So I will call our meeting to order and welcome everybody. Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Roberts. Commissioner Roberts?
Yeah, he's on mute.
Here.
Commissioner Huntosh?
Here.
Commissioner Husnick?
Here.
Commissioner Finneman?
Here.
Commissioner Lorge?
Here.
Commissioner Erickson? You're on mute. Commissioner Erickson? And President Bain.
Here. I'd ask everybody to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to shut off your camera before we do so, you can do so on the bottom left hand of your screen. And I believe Dan will share an image of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members of the EDA, we do have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So
I move
moved.
we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
A motion from Commissioner Lorge and a second from Commissioner Finneman. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Huntosh,
Aye.
Commissioner Husnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Finneman,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorge,
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson,
Aye.
President Bain.
Aye. Agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda this evening is approval of the minutes from our regular meeting, September 14th, 2020. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I would move for approval.
I'll second.
Motion and Commissioner Finneman and a second from Commissioner Huntosh. Any discussion? Hearing none, Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Huntosh. You're on mute, Commissioner Huntosh. Commissioner Husnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Finneman,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorge,
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson,
Aye.
President Bain.
Aye. Minutes approved. Our next agenda item this evening, approved minutes from their downtown workshop, which is September 28th of 2020. I'll entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I motion that we approve.
I'll second.
Motion from Commissioner Husnick, second from Commissioner Finneman. Any discussion? Hearing none. Karen, a roll call once again.
Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Huntosh,
Aye.
Commissioner Husnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Finneman,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorge,
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson,
Aye.
President Bain.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Our next agenda item this evening are the CARES Act COVID-19 emergency grant approvals. Dan, I believe you're walking us through this. Just a quick reminder for members of the EDA. In our last city council meeting, council transferred $300,000 to the EDA of our CARES Act funding for this purpose. And so this evening, EDA members have final approval for those grants. And that is the agenda item we will be addressing. Dan, I'll let you kind of kick off next steps here.
Absolutely. President, members of the EDA, what you have before you, I did email out earlier today, was the list of conditionally approved grant agreements. There were a total of 22 applications that went through, submitted all the follow-up paperwork, went through the underwriting process, and were granted conditional approval based on the documentation that they submitted. Based on those 22 applications, the total grant agreements total just north of $243,000 is what's being issued tonight. On page 2 of my report, there was a summary list that shows the businesses and the award amount that each business was awarded. If you recall, the grant policy did allow for both for-profits and for nonprofits to apply for this grant opportunity. The for-profits were to be funded prior to the nonprofits being considered for funding. So the intent tonight would be to approve the for-profit applications. The remaining funds would then be used to fund the nonprofit applications on a first-come, first-served basis. those nonprofit applications did come in at the same time as the for-profit applications. However, I have not started processing those. I did not know what the grant total amount for the for-profits was going to be, and didn't want the nonprofits to submit paperwork unless they were going to be considered for grant funding. So at this point, we do have some additional funds that will be able to be used to fund some nonprofits as well. Those nonprofit applications, I'll use the time between this meeting and the November 9th meeting to complete their underwriting process, and we'll bring all those back on November 9th for approval. One thing, if you do look at the total or the list of businesses that are on the list of conditionally approved, it does represent a wide variety of businesses within the city of Forest Lake. It's a good representation of different business types. There's sole proprietorships, there's retail businesses, restaurant businesses included in that list. So there's a good variety. So we did hit a wide swath of the business community with this grant program. So that's good to see. They weren't all coming from one particular sector. So with that, the requested action would be approval of the COVID-19 emergency grant program agreements. I would also want to note if any member of the EDA has any interest in any business that's listed on that list, make them, when the motion is made, we'll pull those off. We just need to know what businesses that we need to pull off. We'll then pull those off and vote on those separately. So the intent would be to vote on these as a group, and if any of the EDA members have financial interest or conflict of interest with anybody on the list, pull those ones off, and vote on those one by one to allow that particular member to vote to avoid a conflict.
Let's go, Jackie.
With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the grant program or on the process.
Thank you, Dan. Members of the EDA, any questions of Commissioner Finneman?
Yeah, just a few clarifications. It was mentioned that about 500,000 was requested through applications. So that was more applications required. We're going to dole out 243 plus, and you're going to hold the $50,000 for nonprofits that haven't really been evaluated yet or put in their application to you. Were the other applications, a good $200,000+ worth of applications, were they flawed, just not right? Was there something that didn't qualify? Are there a lot of people out there that think their application still might be considered?
No, so, and that's a great question, Commissioner Finneman. So where this landed was that when applications came in, that 450,000 included both the for-profits and the nonprofit applications. And that was the initial result from all of the applications that came in. When I went through those, some of those applications, they didn't meet grant criteria. They were outside the city of Forest Lake. There was something that precluded them from being awarded the grant funds. They have been contacted and let them know that they weren't able to qualify for the grants. What's remaining here is just the for-profit applications that were able to submit documentation that met the criteria of the grant. So what you may see is the initial application may have come in from their business for say 15,000, but based on what they actually submitted for expenses, that amount would have been reduced. So that's why you see the difference in amount from the initial ask versus what's presented tonight.
In reading the contract for the example businesses, there's a statement in there that says they may have to pay state and federal tax. What are the conditions that set that to a may or an absolute?
I believe that language was in there just because at this point, I believe the IRS is still determining if that is actually taxable income or not. So we're just letting them know that at the end of the day, they're going to have to consult with their tax professional to figure out if that's taxable income or not. We don't want to make the determination for them outside of IRS consultation.
Because that decision's yet to come, maybe on an individual basis from the IRS to decide whether they in fact will have to pay a portion of this in tax.
Correct, and we're just drawing that to their attention that they're saying this is not tax-free money if they have to consult with their attorney or their tax consultant for sure.
Okay, so it might not actually be tax-free. There will be a tax. Is that the odds on there'll be a tax on this for most businesses?
At this point, this stuff is changing. I don't know if Chris has any update on whether or not this CARES Act funding is taxable or not. I don't know that answer off the top of my head.
President Bain and members, if I could just briefly add, we've been telling all of the county's recipients of the grant dollars that these dollars are taxable and we will be issuing a 1099.
Okay.
I think it is our goal of the program, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, that we are not expressing a opinion on taxability, but really just waving a flag of awareness that they will need to consult with their, tax, CPA, their tax provider to determine taxability at the entity level.
Correct.
I don't think we want to be in a position of indicating, and it sounds like the county's taken even a more conservative approach of saying, assume it is taxable unless there's some reason why it's not.
Correct. Yeah. We want to take that position, and we don't want to be giving them advice, especially considering these things have been pretty fluid to date, and those things could change depending upon, act of Congress or federal government could change that criteria.
A piggyback question, maybe to clarify some of the line of questioning that Commissioner Finneman had. If we would have received eligible for-profit applications that qualified up to $300,000, we would have funded up to $300,000, correct? It's not, we aren't intentionally holding back $50,000 or approximately for nonprofit funding. It's just that in our application, there is additional room to fund nonprofits because we haven't exhausted available funds with the for-profit applications. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. So the applications that we received within the allotted time frame, all of those for-profits were gone through. All of those that met the conditional criteria were offered opportunities to submit subsequent information that we would use in the underwriting process. There was never the intent to hold money back for nonprofits. I needed to wait until I got these conditional approvals to know where that first bucket ended up. And to be honest, this number has been was shifting all throughout the process as underwriting happened, because some applications had applied for multiple grants, so what they submitted on their expenses we weren't able to reimburse it because they were reimbursed through another grant program, so total got reduced. So I did not hold money for nonprofits. It ended up being that we do have some left over after all of those for-profits had been considered, but there is going to be some available for nonprofits.
What other questions do we have this evening?
Is there any thoughts at all to, I think there was a bigger cachet of funds somewhere in the original story, to go through another approval process? Or are we going to wait and see for a while and then maybe talk about it like the county is going through, I think, a second approval process?
Are you looking at another round of grant round?
Yes.
At this point, so once the for-profits are funded and the nonprofits are funded, that would exhaust the full allocation of funds that have been allocated for this program. So the intent is not to do an additional grant fund, which is why we ran both the for-profit and the nonprofit at one time. So we wouldn't, if we ran into a situation just like this where the for-profit applications came in under the allotted cap, we would have those applications on hand so I could just bring those right into underwriting without having to go back and do another grant open period. So at this point, we don't have any anticipation to do another grant fund, another round of grant for businesses.
Other questions? Is my headset working okay? Are you hearing me okay?
Now we are.
I'm going to switch my settings here. Are you hearing me okay now?
Loud and clear.
Apologies for that. Other questions? Other questions? Dan, I know this has been a ton of work on putting together the program and the underwriting criteria and going through each of the underwriting process and all of the grant agreements in a very short amount of time. So many thanks to you for putting this together and getting us to this point. Excellent work. Thank you. Process-wise, again, if there are any members of the EDA that have any conflicts of interest on any one of the particular applications we are going to grant tonight, we'd ask that you pull that from a list, and we will, we'll do an initial vote on where there are no conflicts, and then we would do a subsequent vote where there are any potential conflicts so that the conflicting member is able to abstain from that vote. And so I guess I would entertain a motion to approve conditionally approved applications, or any changes if there are any conflicts that need to be identified?
Yeah, I would like to pull out Robert's Funeral Service. I'm a partner in that entity.
Very good. Any
I'll
other-
second your motion, Mara.
So
You made that a motion, right?
I was looking for a motion, so you want to make,
Oh, well, I'll make the motion that we approve the applicants, providing that we can pull whichever ones we need to pull off of there for further consideration because of conflict of interest.
perfect. And so that would be all of the applied entities on page 2 of Dan's memo, with the exception of Robert's Funeral Service, Inc. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Not hearing any discussion. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Hold on one second. Sorry, I apologize. Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Huntash,
Aye.
Commissioner Husnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Finneman,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorge,
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson.
Aye.
President Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. And with that, I would make a motion that we approve the grant agreement for Robert's Funeral Service, Inc. Is there a second?
Second. Yep.
Councilmember Husnick, any discussion? Seeing none. Karen, could we have a roll call on that as well?
Commissioner Roberts,
Abstain.
Commissioner Huntash,
Aye.
Commissioner Husnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Finneman,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorge,
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson,
Aye.
and President Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. And then clarification of next steps, Dan, we would expect to have a list of approvals of the nonprofits at our first meeting here in November.
That is correct. Yep, and we will also start working on processing the checks and get those issued as quickly as we can as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Our next agenda item this evening is the BR&E red flag warning session and program update. I don't believe we have any red flag topics for this evening, but Dan, I'll let you take our conversation from here.
That's great. President, members of the EDA, tonight was a pre-scheduled red flag warning session for the BR&E program. And again, the intent here was, as we've gone out and started to do the BR&E survey work, if any member has identified a business that's in need of assistance or has a concern that needs to get brought forward, these are the sessions where these concerns can get discussed to see if there's any immediate policy action that we can take at the EDA level to assist that business. I have not been aware or made aware of any red flag, businesses that have identified as a red flag or needing immediate assistance. I did leave it on the agenda though, since it was a pre-scheduled session. Also just wanted to have an opportunity to have the EDA come together and just discuss how survey work is going, see if there's any concerns about the surveys, to see if there's any additional resources that are needed to assist with completing the business survey. So it's sort of a two-pronged approach. One, the red flag, and second, just a quick check-in to see how everybody's survey is doing or going, and if there's any additional resources needed. Then the third leg of this item will be a little later than that, so here to talk about the chamber agreement that we've discussed back and forth since late summer. So with that, we'd like to open it up for any discussion that the EDA has on how the survey work is going.
Members of the EDA, time is ours. Any feedback, any needs, any successes or challenges on the BR&E program? I'll just personally share, I will be on track to be completed by the end of November. Challenge is not on the survey part, challenge is on the part of the surveyor in my instance. And so I would expect to be done by the end of November, but no feedback at this time.
Well, I'll start. I did Stella's and they're doing very well. One of the reasons is they opened up their banquet facility to enhance the 6 foot or, the distance seating. He said it's actually amazing the quality of employees he's hiring now because there's so many out of work in the food service industry. And as far as feedback goes for the future from the city and from EDA, basically he says less regulation and monitoring. So I don't know what specifically, but he just says kind of get out of my way and let me do my job. But he's very happy with how things are going. The home-based business I contacted sells nutritional products. She has had no impact from COVID. And a bank that I contacted, they said the biggest effect or the only effect they've felt is that they can't share employees between branches because of COVID. And that's been a little bit of a pinch because if somebody calls in sick or for some reason they need another teller or loan officer, they can't take it from another office. 2 of them I really do need to do in person, and my plan is to do them later this week.
Excellent. A thought on, the less regulation. I'll be interested on feedback from members of the EDA as well as members of, the business community on what we do with this patio seating. We've allowed for expansion of patio during COVID, and clearly we're out of patio season now, unfortunately. But as we start thinking about spring, quite possibly we'll still be under some COVID restrictions. And what do we, how do we continue that? And what does that look like long-term? Is there some potential, permanent or long-term changes to those patio allowances? I'll be interested in feedback and just where that conversation goes next.
Max from Stella's did say the patio really saved them this summer, the ability to have increased outdoor seating.
Yeah. Any others, any direct feedback or any feedback about the process, anything that we can be providing you as a tool or any other assistance?
Some of the businesses that I've related to, be it real estate, and there's real estate people here, so maybe their story is slightly different, but real estate, financial management, insurance, they all seem to have weathered the COVID storm pretty well. And so some would have felt embarrassed to, even though they might have had some opportunity to go in for an application, they felt they were too strong and the money should have been saved for others. So we have some businesses that have made it through pretty comfortably.
Good to hear.
And no one in real estate, they're denied that. So
Real estate has done well. A lot of it attributed to the low interest rates, and it's predicted to stay that way as long as the interest rates stay low.
Any other feedback, either process or specific? All right. I know we formally will have time on the calendar once we close out this process at the end of November. Dan, do we have another red flag warning session on the calendar between now and then, or is our next scheduled revisit on this in December?
I believe there's one on November 9th as well. So we'll do one more, and again, if it's needed, if there's no need for it, I can pull it, but my intent would be to just do another check-in session in November just to, because I know myself, I sometimes like the reminders of, when I have an agenda that comes up to make sure I'm getting that work completed. So I'll just keep another update session on for the 9th, and then we'll close this off. The surveys will be completed by the 30th, and then the data analysis will happen in December. The report to be done in the first part of 2021.
Okay, that's great. I know we had, as part of the agenda, a review from the chamber's perspective on this process. Nanette, is there anything you'd like to add at this point? So want to provide that opportunity if there's something to add, or if that's for a future session, happy to include it on a future session as well. Your thoughts? Glad you're here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, President Bain. Dan and I have been in discussion about the surveying process. And so basically, if there's anybody that needs help or if there's some leftover businesses that have not been assigned, after tonight, Dan and I will be recapping on that to see where we're at. And so if you are having a difficult time finding the time to get to all of them, let Dan know, and then we'll figure out how to finish up those surveys.
That's great. Thank you. All right. Any other discussion items before we move on from this? Not hearing any. Our next agenda item this evening is a Washington County update. Chris, glad you're here. Welcome. Any updates for us this evening?
Thank you, President Bain and members. Just a really quick update. We are in the third process, or the third round of accepting applications. We have about $1 million yet to allocate, or somewhere thereabouts. And as of this morning, in the third round, we've received about 20 applications countywide. So they're coming in, but slowly, and it does close November 4th. And so this will be our last round. We are really running out of time. We've got until December 1st to process all of the applications and get the money out the door. And that's really coming quick, and it's taking quite a bit of time to get through the applications. As Dan knows, it's considerable amount of work to review the applications, make sure they're all eligible, make sure the expenditures are all eligible, and send the grant agreements and the money. So we're making good progress. And if all goes well, November 4th, we'll have a total of about $7 million spent within the county, and that should serve about maybe somewhere in the 600 range of businesses across the county.
That's terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Chris this evening? Not seeing anything. Nanette, we've got a chamber update as our next agenda item. Anything else for us this evening?
Dan, is this where you'd like me to jump in with our conversation? Perfect. So again, greetings, President Bain and members of the EDA. As we've shared before, Dan and I have been in the process of conversation about what exactly the BRNE agreement would look like. And so I believe in your packet, there is a list of the different things. So I'll just go through that very quickly for you. Some of the things that that the chamber does for our local businesses. We have in are in the process of updating a comprehensive list of all of our businesses. We work with current and potential businesses and residents who require various types of information. And it is true, you cannot imagine the various kinds of information I get calls about, but answering those kinds of questions. Here's where we conduct help with the BRNE surveys as we see fit, and especially futuristically looking at the restaurant and retail sectors. We do field, again, the calls from the public. We advocate for small business on the county and state level. We promote the City of Forest Lake and Forest Lake programs through referrals, social media, newspaper, and so on. The chamber does visit local businesses once a month to engage with and perform ribbon cuttings. And then these again are featured on our Facebook page as well as in the Forest Lake Times. We provide the opportunity for networking through cost-free networking options like Coffee and Connections, which now is Zoom. We present business promotion activities on a regular basis. You may recognize some of them, such as the Lakes Area Expo, Lake Fest, the Downtown Wine Walk, Oktoberfest, and the annual golf tournament, Chamber Golf Tournament. I will note right here that just since I've spoke to you the last time, we've implemented 2 new programs. One's called Slay the Day. It's a retail event coming up in November, and then another gift card program, the Two Birds gift program. And both of these we are doing at no cost to businesses. And again, it's to promote business in Forest Lake. We support the City of Forest Lake's tree lighting event. We continue to keep tabs on local businesses' needs through ongoing conversation. We do participate in the downtown revitalization efforts. We do periodic updates to the business list. We're in the process of reconstructing the chamber website to better serve our business community community, and the city of Forest Lake is also featured there. And then, of course, I attend the Forest Lake EDA meetings. And then there was just a couple of things that we added since COVID, and that's doing the up-to-date information with city, state, and county federal level grant programs through our business support, which we called those Zoom meetings, as well as in the e-news and social media with our partnership and with the city of Forest Lake. And then again, some of the newer programs that we've implemented, such as the digital downtown and our video spotlights, and then again, specific support to this surveying effort. So lots of things there for you to note. I think the only other thing is Dan had mentioned that to me at one point about, or had brought up to this group about prorating the cost. And I do feel that we've been pretty zealous about our efforts at the chamber throughout the year. And again, COVID kind of slowed down the process. And so I'm asking that the funding not be prorated, but rather for the efforts that we put forth this year. And I will also note with that, there's been a change in how the state chamber requests funding as far as on a city level. They no longer look for cities to be members of the chamber, but more of a partnership. And so it is exactly what we are doing. It's through these types of partnerships with our EDAs that the cities are represented rather than by paid dues. So that's a lot of information I know that I threw out you in a really quick effort here, but do you have any questions specifically for me that I can answer?
We're moving on to a task agreement yet, aren't we, to approve the additional funding that you've asked for?
This is the task agreement.
Okay. Yeah, I read through that and I see I'm not sure what we're doing for an approval here tonight, but.
Yeah, Dan, can you tee that up for us on what's next steps and what's thoughts on going from this list to an agreement?
Absolutely. So what you have before you here is just sort of, when we started talking about this at the EDA level, we wanted to make sure that we weren't overloading the chamber with, our list of stuff that they needed to get done. So we wanted to make sure that the work plan fit in with Nanette's current work plan, was able to be achievable by both the chamber, and we were getting what we needed out of the agreement. So Nanette provided the list that she just went through. Just looking for feedback on the items on the list, as well as the term and the cost of the agreement. Based on that feedback, I then would take that back, actually draft the agreement, and then bring that back in November for approval and consideration. The one thing I would want to note is that you're recommending a 2-year term on this one, since we're so far into 20 already, that it makes sense just to continue that through 21 and reevaluate in 21 how the agreement went. So we don't have to go through this, in November and then have it redone again in 2 months later in January. So just do a 2-year term on that. The major feedback point would be the cost. Do we want to prorate this year since we're bringing the agreement late, or do we want to go back and have it be retroactive all the way throughout the year? I will echo what Nanette said. We have been working in good faith since about July pretty extensively on this agreement, working on stuff. The business list that I did disperse out to the EDA was provided by Nanette. She did work on that. So there has been a lot of good faith work between the city and the EDA. All the way back through March. So we've been working extensively, really COVID hit. But the major decision point is, do we want to do the full funding or the prorated, as I brought up in the previous meeting.
Thank you, Dan. I'm interested in members' perspectives on both the term of the agreement and then the question of prorating. Commissioner Finneman, go ahead.
No, I don't have any challenges or questions to that. She covers a lot of ground, and I think those extra funds are deserved. I got a question. Well, Nanette's here. We began a while back with Paul Peterson, and this is by no means a criticism. Please get past that. To do interviews and photograph and do spreads on a variety of business. So we began with the fireplace gathering, and that got to a point where it sort of stopped. I've been volunteering my time. I got a variety of businesses that were interested in participating. Maybe got them too enamored with the idea, because I think the log jam is, again, Paul tells me he just he's got so much other things to do. He really can't even use somebody like me to lead into it. All it does is get stackpiled, on his desk, and so he can't get to it. So is that idea kind of stalled right now? We really can't move ahead on any of that. We need Paul to get to the editing and interview stage. And if he can't do that, then we're kind of stalled on that proposition.
I do actually have an answer for you. Paul and I have been meeting, I believe, weekly now for about the last 3 weeks to address exactly the list that you're talking about and to move forward. He is getting caught up on some of his projects, and especially after the election, then he feels he'll have some light at the end of the tunnel. We have done another recording a couple weeks ago, and so we've got some more content. We did that in studio, and so we've got some more content. The delay with Fireside actually was in finalizing some of the information, and so that's where that kind of stalled out. And then I think, you're right. The list, the pile on his desk did grow to quite an extent. So we do have probably 5 different projects in mind over the next few months. Actually, it'll be longer than that before they're released, but we'll start recording so that then when his workload after the elections is done, and he had some big projects to do with the children's performing arts. And so that's where that's at. So we are moving forward. Thanks for asking.
Well, I just want to speak in support of not prorating and doing the full amount for the 2020, because I am involved in the chamber and I know what goes on behind the scenes. And the city has funded the chamber in the past. And I don't know what happened, how that got dropped, but it's amazing how much time the chamber actually does on behalf of the city over and above chamber activities, and constantly promoting businesses, answering questions, a lot of time spent on the phone, fielding questions and directing people of where to go, how to find answers. She's like a part-time employee for the city to direct people. And that's a real time sucker. So I think the compensation to the chamber is well earned.
If I may just offer a point of clarification, Commissioner Lord, this agreement is actually a revival of that original agreement that the city had with the chamber. This actually is based off of the original agreement that the city had with the Chamber of Commerce. It was, I believe it was stopped in 2014, 2015. Again, I think it was an oversight. I don't think it was a performance issue, but this is a revival of that. And, it's actually kind of a modernization. And we looked at the numbers and actually increased this amount based on that original term.
Yes, in terms of feedback and direction, I too would support not prorating for this agreement. We saw BRNE activity on part of the chamber on steroids as COVID was kicking off, and certainly there were, multiple times per week status updates and conference calls and Zoom meetings, and so certainly I support, a full funding for this last year, and then whatever we can do to appropriately time these contracts so that we're not having to enter into a new one for the new year next year. I would support that as well.
Mara, I would help support that also. I agree that the amount of work that they do there is phenomenal for what we're getting there. It's a great buy. So I would certainly support that.
I would as well. This whole thing, I think the chamber really showed the value for a lot of these businesses, including ourselves, when we went through this, about trying to get answers and all the rest. And so it's invaluable to what this chamber's done in the last 9 months here for local businesses.
That's great. Any other feedback on the agreement or instructions to Dan as that's being put into final draft? Not hearing any. Dan, do you have enough feedback from us to take that to the next step?
I have everything I need to take it to the next step and get it back on November 9th.
Perfect. Look forward to seeing it. We are at the end of our planned agenda items this evening. I do note that we have, before we adjourn, we do have 4 attendees that are ready to chime in here for the downtown district. Before we adjourn, though, I did just want to note that the city received notification, as many of you saw, that the state's bond legislation passed, and the city of Forest Lake was fortunate enough to be included in those bond proceeds. And so we are, and it was actually incredibly fortuitous on our part. We had not previously applied for state bond funds, and this was our first go around in doing so. We applied for 3 projects, as many of you know, and our sewer infrastructure project was approved at about $1.7 million. And so we are, as a city, matching those funds for ongoing sewer lift station improvements. Is a big help to our infrastructure, especially as we start thinking about future development. And so happy to have been included in that bonding package, in that bonding bill that did pass and got through the governor's signature last week as well. So wanted to pass that along. Nice win for Forest Lake. Not having anything further on the agenda this evening. Any other updates? We are then going to, we will adjourn this meeting, and then we will transition over to the downtown committee. So if I could have a motion for adjournment of this meeting.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. And Karen, could we do one more roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Natash,
Aye.
Commissioner Husnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Finneman,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorge,
Aye.
Commissioner Erickson,
Aye.
and President Bain.
Aye. And we are adjourned. However, do not go away, because we are going to flip the agenda, flip the page here, and we are going to move right into the downtown committee workshop. And I will note, Karen, do we have our panelists or our guests as part of, are they in the waiting room, or are they as part of this meeting now? Just want to make sure we've got it.
They're in the waiting rooms. Yep. So they're in the waiting room. So I'm just moving them in right now as we
Perfect.
speak.
Give it just a moment here.
And so that should be everybody moved into the meeting as panelists. So.
Excellent. So we have transitioned from our EDA meeting into our downtown committee workshop. Welcome, everybody. Glad you're able to join us. We do have a hard stop this evening at 7 o'clock for a city council meeting. So want to jump right into our workshop session. Karen, could you note attendance for the record? And we have one agenda item for this evening, which is the work plan update. And I'm going to turn it over to Dan to get us started this evening so we can make good use of our time.
Let's do a quick screen share here. All right, President, members of the EDA, members of the Downtown Committee. Tonight we'll just start talking about the Downtown Committee work planning session. That tagline, ideas for today and tomorrow, is not my tagline. It was actually part of the slide deck that I used to build this presentation off of. Kind of thought it fit, so instead of deleting it, I kept it on there. So I did catch it at the last minute. So that's not my tagline for this planning session. However, it kind of fits, so by default, it's there. Just going over tonight, today's goal is basically to start to draft the work plan and the goals for the Downtown Committee. I think as we go through this process, the goal for tonight is to keep the focus on the committee's aims and not necessarily the tactics. We're not really at a tactical level right now. We still want to kind of keep a, where is this ship going? Not necessarily how we're going to, sail it there. We kind of want to give general direction as to where we're going, or put some meat on the bones of the plans for a downtown committee. Just a brief summary, since it's been a little while since you sort of met in the planning session of the work done to date. If you recall back at the kickoff meeting, we went through a SWOT analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for the downtown area. That analysis was then reviewed at the second downtown committee meeting, where those items from the original SWOT analysis are broken down into 3 categories: geographic, infrastructure, and economic. And then each one of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats were then placed into that those categories. That updated SWOT analysis review was distributed as part of the packet for tonight's downtown committee meeting. If anybody needs that again, let me know. I'm happy to email that out. But if you recall, SWOT analysis are done not necessarily to set work plan items. They're more there to sort of give a good lay of the land to see what are the current conditions within the marketplace. And we have completed that SWOT analysis. Personally, I always think strategic planning sessions are best done in person. I think it's something that's difficult to transition to a digital format. I've been involved in numerous planning sessions in my career, and a handful of those remotely. And I always say that the remote ones, they're just, you miss it. You miss a big component by not being in the same room. That being said, we will do our best to try to get make this a good and productive planning session. So tonight's format, I basically have this brought down into 4 questions. I try to make it as simple as possible, but yet as in-depth as possible, given the situation that we're in. What I have is I have 4 questions. After each question, we'll pause for feedback. At the end of the planning session, we'll do a quick wrap up and then go through what the next steps are. So it's just 4 simple questions. The faster we get through the questions, the faster the planning session will go. But I think these questions will hopefully start some good discussion on downtown committee's work plan. So question number 1, this question sort of envisions you putting on your future self hat and looking back at the downtown committee. So this is, say, 2 years down the road, you look back at the downtown committee and say, I know it's been successful when blank happens. So to put this in other terms, I've been a runner for a number of years. When I first started running, I set the goal of, I'll know I'll be a successful runner when I qualify for the Boston Marathon. I do realize after actually setting that long-term goal, that I probably will never reach it, but it's a good aspirational goal to have. I mean, it keeps me going out there, it keeps me running in conditions of snow and whatnot. So it's okay to put a big lofty goal in that blank, and don't feel any shame of putting a lofty goal in there. My goal to qualify for Boston has been one I may never hit, but it still keeps me going. So as we start looking at question number 1, fill in that blank with as lofty of a goal as you want to put in there. So right now I'll pause it and look for you to fill in the blank. So question number 1, again, I know the downtown committee has been successful when blank happens. Turn it back over to the downtown committee to start filling in that blank.
By means of a couple of different modes of communication here, some of you may be more may prefer chat over vocalizing. So if you want to use the chat feature, feel free to use that chat feature in Zoom if you want to drop in ideas there as well. Just open it up, fill in the blank. Downtown committee will be successful when what happens? I will say when vacancies go down. Toss them out.
I will say when a plan of action is carried out.
I will say when Forest Lake is recognized as a destination community.
I would add that, I would say when Forest Lake is considered a white bear or a still water.
There's a comment in the text box or in the chat box. When our retail spaces are 80% filled, and when we have good foot traffic. Both good comments.
And it seems to move most effectively when we get a significant participation of downtown businesses. Ideally, that's in a live meeting format, but it has happened in the past where we've had, a good 50-60% of the business owners in the downtown area participating. And then if you can lock into a schedule where there's no stall, there's no stoppage, and you can keep rolling, then I think you can be very successful.
Well, we've been successful when there's a feel of vibrancy.
Excellent. We've got both Matt and Robert Anderson on from Fireside Getaway. Do you have some specific thoughts? When we have a thriving downtown was an addition. All right, good seeds. We can come back to this one. Dan, you want to take us to the next question and maybe we circle back and see if there's any additions once we've been through all of them.
Absolutely. And just before I wrap this question up, there's also sort of an ulterior motive to put this question on as the opening question. I've been having conversations with Paul Pierce from LATV about actually he brought the topic up to me. He was interested in the downtown committee. He said, what's the downtown committee? What's it doing? What he wants to do, we've talked about like late December, is actually doing a video that focuses on what the downtown committee is all about. And one of the questions that we started looking at was, part of that video was, what is the success of the committee? That's one of the questions that we're looking at potentially answering in that video. This video is intended to be a promotional video for the downtown committee, sort of bringing awareness to the community at large of what's going on with the downtown committee, but also as a recruitment tool for the local businesses. As Commissioner Finneman said, the more businesses that we can get engaged in the planning session, the more successful the plan will be. In talking to planners, that's the first thing they always say is get the businesses involved at the ground floor versus trying to bring in a plan that's 3/4 done. So part of the reason why this question was on there was to at least start to have some background so when Paul and I need to discuss with the video, I can start filling in that first question. So look for that to happen, probably in late December. Again, I know his schedule's been pretty busy looking at other business videos, but there is a video specific for downtown that's getting early stages of production now.
I would also say, Dan, I think a blank work plan isn't the most attractive recruiting tool. And I think once we've got this work plan filled out, I think there's also opportunity to circle that back out to some of those downtown stakeholders. And I think we will see people choose to engage on certain topics, and then we can keep them posted where they may not be here for every single session, but certainly those areas of topic we can be reaching out and getting some more collaboration that way too.
Fully agree. Let me do a quick screen share here for question number 2. This one's a two-parter. Again, think aspirational here, think big picture. If downtown had blank, it would be much better at achieving X. So, for example, if downtown had a light rail station, it'd be much better at achieving an increase in foot traffic. So, what do you think downtown needs to help it achieve, or what is X and what is Y for? What does it need and what can it help achieve?
A better parking solution for sure. That sometimes is the cart before the horse, but in many ways, people who look at the downtown and understand its history can see that there's an issue depending on where you are in downtown. The south end of downtown is packed, and maybe there's opportunities there. But the north end has more luxury of space, but less business at the time being. The idea of parking is big.
I think if the downtown had a trailhead, we could attract people year round, whether they're unloading their snowmobiles or unloading their bicycles, whatever the case may be.
I would add a bigger marina. I'm sorry, I'll go on mute and I'll be back. I'll try that again. So I would say a larger marina would attract more summer visitors, or dock space, however we achieve that dock space.
I think if it had an active arts presence, if it had an art gallery, craft center, or Weavers Guild display, using glazing memories to draw them in for classes where they'd come in with their families with kids and stay for lunch or supper and have openings, have art openings, get the area crafters involved, have seasonal craft shows, art and craft shows like Marina on St. Croix. We could set up the tents in Lakeside Park and bring them in.
I would say on a larger housing development, whether it be condos or apartments, would help to vitalize downtown and add that energy. You need people living downtown to support downtown.
Piggyback on a theme that's been picked up a couple times of just calling out special events to draw people to downtown, whether that's arts related or celebrations, whatever that special music, whatever that special event might look like.
I think it needs to
Might
be a
also
little,
lead, so go ahead.
I think it needs to be a little more bicycle friendly, with bike racks and that kind of thing, so that we can get more traffic that way, just coming off the trail. So it would help the downtown businesses.
It needs to be more walker and bike friendly for hooking up to the trail.
Yeah, true.
I'll mention again, as I have before, just the lower speeds, especially on that north end, because that's where I feel that that's where the commonality would be, is crossing over to the trail. And again, love to see that be safer there.
I think lower speeds for that whole corridor might be, I mean, I think about crossing even on the south side by South Shore, close to Forest Lake Floral and Big Apple Bagel. That's a little bit like playing Frogger as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
If it would ever be possible, which probably isn't, to make a bike path around the lake, that would draw a lot of people, especially in fall, summer. It would be a destination. Let's go bike around Forest Lake. That would make a day.
It's on the comp plan, but yes.
For what year?
Well, 2040.
Yeah.
Is that when North Shore Trail is being talked about that far off?
That's part of it. Yeah. That trail system extends from downtown up to North Shore, and there's kind of connectivity to make the loop.
But the actual remodel of North Shore Drive, is that all the way out to, what'd you say, 2024?
No, so the comp plan just goes out to 2040. So it's in the comp plan, but there isn't a specified timeline of when that happens within the comp plan.
Okay, I thought there was some talk
of
about.
gaps still on infrastructure to get there, but yes,
Okay.
it is. I would say it's the vision at this point, not, it's in the plan, but there's a lot of gaps to fill.
That was one of the bonding bill requests, to do part of North Shore Trail and put a trail and things like that we submitted with the sewers and the bridge and things like that.
In the CIP, there's portions of North Shore identified as early as 2030 without funding at this point.
With part of that bonding bill, looking at the strengths and the conversation here about walkability and so forth, is there any plans or conversation to put in lighted crossing paths like they did over by the high school? I mean, you mentioned crossing the Highway 61 down by Big Apple Bagel. I mean, that is total Frogger, taking your life in your own hands, versus like rural Blockbuster, West Coast, or Wells Fargo. I mean, at least there you have a crosswalk, and generally if you put a foot out there, most people will slow down. I mean, if there was 2 or 3 of those spots along that corridor that you could actually hit a button, and there is one, I guess, outside of Fireside, but just some more opportunities to slow that traffic down. Is that part of the infrastructure bonding bill or anything like that?
So that was not part of what was submitted as part of the bonding bill, but certainly I think this group for this exercise, let's focus on what should be on the list and then the tactics on how do we make that happen, whether that's a bonding request or whether that's a joint project with the county or however we might make that happen. Let's solution that. That's going to take a number of different avenues to solution, but I think let's get it on the list, because your point on lit pedestrian crosswalks on 61 and also Broadway as well is that those are important items that should be on this list. All right, we're at 6:30. I want to make sure we're able to cover all 4 questions. Maybe Dan, let's transition to question 3.
Absolutely. So question number 3, the most important item to focus on for downtown revitalization is, so if you had to rank the most important item that this group should focus on, what is that one item?
Ooh. What's your one item, members?
I would
Traffic
have to say
control.
parking, number 1.
I hear
Traffic
parking.
Traffic control in
I hear
general.
traffic control. We have a comment in the Boxville retail space. One item. I'm going to say infrastructure, and I'm going to say infrastructure for this group because I think it's the thing that the city can do that others struggle. Private sector struggles to fill that gap, but I think that's something that the city can bring to the table. And we also know there's a challenge based on the sewer study that we just saw. Anybody else? One item.
The cost of to a development for SAC, WAC, watershed in the downtown area is a significant hit. I don't know what you do to attend that, but that's a big blockage.
So lower the cost of development.
If the city can participate in some fashion to make that happen, or it's a hard or. I don't know where the ors take us.
Right. It's a good item for the list, though. We have a comment in the text box, awareness. So the one thing, awareness of downtown Forest Lake and what it has to offer. I like that too. That's a market, it's a marketing, making sure that people know what we do have. That there's a regional awareness too outside of Forest Lake.
And it's hard to just say one because it's a chicken and an egg thing. The first 2 things that came to my mind is our conversation around the speed of downtown traffic and then retail. I mean, Judy's absolutely right. Let's fill the vacancies, but what comes first? Getting the traffic to slow down so people feel safe is probably pretty essential.
But if you don't have the infrastructure and we don't address the sewer, we don't expand. So to me, that's number 1. Especially since it takes time.
Correct. Yeah. The good news is we don't need to be single dimensional in this project. So, but it is good to hear what is top priority from a prioritization standpoint.
I just want to make the one comment about the sewer concerns that we had identified in the study. Even though the price tag that you guys saw, that was a standalone project without MnDOT in doing anything on 61, and the city came in and did that all by itself with no other work going on. If another lighthouse lofts came in, half of that cost is already covered with the development fees that are your typical fees that you see. So it really would take 2 projects to build more capacity than you guys can build within the planning and zoning. So it's not as big as a hurdle in my mind, even though right now looking at a price tag standalone, it is. Obviously, we'd like to time that with a MnDOT reconstruct of 61 or something. And therefore, then a lot of the removals and all the other stuff that is accounted in that construction estimate goes away because those are already consumed by the overall project MnDOT's doing anyway. But if the city did have to come in and do a standalone project, basically 2 Lighthouse Lofts projects pay for that. And the amount of area that you guys expanded with the zoning to accommodate future growth is, would more than pay back that project.
So in that light, if I can have a second number one, maybe my second number one is developer awareness of Forest Lakes, what we have available, what the opportunity is in Forest Lake.
President Bain, I'd like to kind of piggyback on that. One of the topics that's come up from our chamber executive director kind of world is really now would be the time to be doing promotion to those downtown businesses, because whether we like it or not, there's pretty much a mass exodus out of the area, and so they're looking for safe communities. So somehow we can draw that in as well. I think we've got a target market right now.
And when you say mass exodus, you mean mass exodus from closer to the St. Paul Minneapolis core, right? There's businesses looking to relocate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I also think we've got people working from home. And so the daytime market in Forest Lake is very different than what it was a year ago. Dan, any follow-ups on this question before we turn the page to number 4?
No, and actually this one, question 3 and 4, 3 dovetailed into 4. So question number 4, and I won't put it up on screen because it's pretty simple, but basically what are the top priorities for the downtown committee to focus on? So you've all kind of identified what everybody's number 1 is. Now it's sort of, let's take that list and start to shuffle out what are those priorities that we want to start focusing on. And based on the answers for this, I'll apply them back to the SWOT analysis and start really working on, what are some of those tactical things that we can do. So question number 4, what are the top priorities for the downtown committee to focus on?
I guess circling back to what we heard and what we discussed previously, is there anything we haven't talked about that should be on the list?
We need to encourage property owners to take care of their properties a little bit better. We have some buildings there that are been sitting around and are old, and the weeds are growing and trees are growing up alongside and all that. And I think we need to encourage people to take better care of their properties, whether they're vacant or not. I think there's an obligation to do that. Place to start.
Improve the overall aesthetic, correct?
Yep.
For me, one of the top 3 priorities, there's multiple ones, of course, we've discussed a number of them here tonight, but, if you think about the area down there and not considering the business side of it, but what is going to draw people to that area down there? And a big draw is the lake, is Lakeside Park, marina, boating. Now these are all summer activities, of course, but that's always going to be a bigger draw. And then the issue is the whole parking problem that continues to plague so many of the businesses down there, because people that drive down have no place to park because it's full of boat trailers and cars and other things like that. So that, to me, the hub of that area there, not right on US 61 there, but beyond it, has to be a priority as to what do we do with that area there, because that starts to drive what happens up right on 61 then.
Yeah, Jerry, thanks for bringing that up, because I think land use planning is really important. We talk about, how boat trailer parking and car parking and retail space and what might be additional recreational space. And as some of those homes, especially to the north side of Lakeside Memorial Park, start to redevelop, what does that look like? And so I do think that land use planning should be on the list.
Absolutely.
Other items that we haven't talked about tonight that we want to make sure is part of that work plan?
This question might be for Ryan. You know, it seems like part of the things that handcuffs us in Forest Lake is the fact that our two major thoroughfares are either county owned or state owned. Simple things like not even being able to put up welcome to Forest Lake signs and different things that we run up against MnDOT mainly, not so much the county. I know a number of years ago that the state turned back the portion of 61 to Chisago County. Is there any, I mean, obviously there'd be some benefits, but is it just too cost prohibitive? Is there some state aid that we would get in return if we were to ask for the state to turn that to us? Or is that just like I said, too cost prohibitive? Because it would unhandcuff a lot of things, the speed issue, just everything that we want to do right through our downtown, we have to go through MnDOT, and it just makes it real tough to do anything.
So the wrecking ball order is going to go MnDOT to the county to the locals. There's been a lot of historic talk and conversations about a turn back on 61 possible in the future, when and if and how that happens. It's going to take a lot of money to make that happen. But that ultimately, that conversation was Highway 61 at some said time in the future will be turned back to Washington County. And part of the reason, you know, the turn back that occurred between the county and the city is the county wants a looping system like they got now with 32, 33 Broadway. And therefore, then the city took over North Shore Trail. So that's why that happened. But obviously, the county's more flexible. You know, the states, there's processes that they go through, and they don't waver between cities or counties on those processes. Every little project that we do, we go through the same process to apply for the same permits. So it's just the process they have set in place, and I don't foresee them changing because it's how MnDOT operates and works within their departments and the number of people that are involved in a review on something as simple as placing flower baskets within their right of way. You know, at the end of the day, they're conscious about what goes in their clear zones because of safety and the speeds on their roadways. Now, obviously, has Lake Street portion changed in the last 20 years? Certainly. You know, so, you know, you look back 20 years ago in what your population was, you obviously had way less traffic. All the traffic data is available, you know, as public knowledge on their site. So you can see how over time, everything's increased in Washington County in this particular area. So, you know, are we getting closer to that turn back? Maybe sometime. You know, it makes sense. Both MnDOT doesn't want anything to do with these types of roads anymore. You know, the more stuff they can let go. You're seeing a lot of this down in Lake Elmo happening right now. So where a lot of the turnbacks are occurring within the county, you know, are in Lake Elmo, MnDOT to Washington County. And then some of those to the locals. What Chisago County did, Chisago County turned back a lot of roadways to the townships, and there's zero funding on those roads. So, you know, so that's a whole nother situation too. So if we were to have to take on a Highway 61 with our current budget, that's where all our budget would have to go. And all the other things that we've talked about west and east of 61, those wouldn't be relevant in the next 10, 15 years because you'd have to deal with 61 issues. So that's why short term, we try to do all these cooperative agreement projects, and we do have 3 in the pipeline. You got Everton Avenue or County Road 33, 2023 construction. That's going to include a trail. I'm bringing this up because this all brings back to the trail conversation you guys are having, that you might not know of all these projects that are in the works. All these projects too don't have stormwater treatment, so they're all going to, you know, meet current standards at the time of permitting. 2025, Washington County's coming in on 11th Avenue or County Road 32 from 61 to the bridge that they built back in 2012. That'll have a trail along that as well. And we get to the intersection of 61 in that intersection. So that's where MnDOT then comes into play to make safety improvements there. And then in 2024 construction, MnDOT's looking at Highway 97 now between the Divergent Diamond double, which will include a trail on the south side of that project. So you got all these other things that are working, you know, in progress. It's just, well, County Road 33 is $6 million project right now. You know, that's where we're at. So, that's way more than funding than we have. Just want to bring up those projects. So the county and the state are doing stuff within Washington County, but all your turnback questions to make things easier and stuff, the higher priorities in Lake Elmo with the development boom and the traffic, transition changes and stuff like that. And we also talk about in our comp plan, other roads that would be turned back to the county, such as Elmcrest Hornsby on the west side, which basically be a frontage road reliever to I-35, and how Headwaters Parkway will connect into that someday. So there will be a whole nother trail network and master plan and storm sewer and all that stuff too. So I know that it gets out of the downtown area, but yeah, is it more flexible with the county? But the county also has, I would say, less funding available than the state does. We've been able to cap a lot of the state funding, whether it's through the cooperative agreement projects or just the roundabout project that we did. We could have not done that without state money at Goodview in 97. And same thing with the double roundabout projects. We were able to get all those pedestrian improvements done in there because MnDOT worked with the city on spreading the federal money over the entire project instead of just hoarding it on their local share that they obtained for that project. So, there's win-wins for both ways. Definitely, I think traffic speed is an issue. One thing we could do, maybe we put our traffic portable radar sign thing out there to see if traffic is a perception of speed or is it actually reality. That's an easy thing we can do. We can put it out there 2 days in a week and we'll know what we got for speeds real time. So I think that'll be a good exercise to do because we often hear traffic speeds are an issue. I think it's more the sight distances, especially at the intersection of Second and 61 there, where you got cars parked on both sides of the roads. You got to get out in the moving lane of traffic to be able to see north and south before you determine whether you're going to go or not. And, some of the traffic stuff we've done in the past is up at 4th and 61. We have concepts prepared that show roundabout there and how you could then have a median. So if you're at 2nd, you could pull out right, go around the roundabout and come right back downtown. So we have these concepts, even as far as the whole Lindstrom, split eight down to, obviously it's gone past its time with the development of other properties around there, such as Cherrywood Point and Lighthouse Lofts. We kind of bottleneck things with there, but that has its pros and cons too. So there's a lot of stuff that the city's done that is out there, and still that Trunk Highway 61 aesthetics and water quality plan has easily 20 to 30 things we could do that are identified in there.
Speaking of that, right, I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of the things that, kind of the next steps, as we transition to the next steps, is going through those existing plans, as part of what this group should at least be aware of, because like Ryan said, there are a lot of plans that are currently in existence for downtown, for Highway 61. And as opposed to having this group consistently reinventing the wheel, let's take a look at those existing plans. A lot of investment was made in getting those plans developed, be familiar with those, and then build off of that. So we're building off of existing planning versus reinventing the planning. So I'm glad Ryan brought those studies up, because that is on the list of kind of next steps, is to bring those studies back to the downtown committee for further review and for just an informational meeting dedicated to the Highway 61 study, a meeting dedicated to the market study that Humphrey Institute did for us last year, just so everybody's kind of aware as to what historically has been done on Highway 61.
So Dan, with that transition and with what the remaining time we have left for today's discussion, what else would you like, or maybe kind of outline next steps? So this is a kind of sketch and priorities for a work plan. You want to kind of highlight what you see, how this information is going to be used for next steps?
Yeah, so I mean, what I'll do, I'll take this list of ideas and sort of bring them back up, similar to what I did with the SWOT analysis, and put them in buckets and develop sort of those first tier. Here's the high level goals for the downtown committee. I'm going to start re-engaging with downtown planners. I had reached out early in the summer to a lot of planners, initially describing kind of what the downtown committee was going to do, and sort of at least some initial thoughts on work plan. But now that I have a more solidified list of ideas as to what the committee wants to focus on, I'll bring those back to those downtown planners. I got to make sure they're still available to do the downtown planning sessions, as calendars could have changed since June, July, when I first reached out to them. So I'll re-engage the downtown planners. We'll bring those back to the downtown committee. I'll also start to solidify the work plan items and priorities that were discussed tonight. Bring those back for another review, and then we can, at that point, start to really this one first, this one second, to make sure that that list is representative as to what was discussed tonight. And then, as sort of alongside that, is to start that review of those existing planning documents. So as we're doing future planning for the city, let's also take a look back at those existing planning documents. And those will be similar. The EDA has gone through a few of those, but since this group is larger than that, it's probably worth just going through, dusting out those studies one more time, bring them back to the downtown committee as a whole, and start reviewing those planning documents. So that's where the next steps are. I just want to remind everybody the next downtown committee meeting will be November 23rd at 5:30 at the next scheduled meeting. At that point, I hope we will have a sketched out work plan, and if I can get a downtown plan, get a better idea of where the downtown planners are, and when we can start working on the downtown planning.
Take myself off of mute here. That sounds great, Dan. I guess I'd open it up to the group as you hear those next steps from Dan, as you reflect on our conversation from tonight. Anything anybody else would like to add, or anything else to be considered?
Is there an official list of who's all on this committee? It's great to have the Andersons involved, some intimate stakeholders in downtown, but it would be nice to have more that, it's great and to have as much interest we have in participation, but the people that really have businesses or own buildings downtown, and I'm sure we've reached out to them, but do we need to continue to do so to get them more involved?
We do reach out on every time the meeting goes out, that initial invite list, the initial invite list keeps getting sent out with the updated information on it. So we do, it goes out to a pretty large group. Obviously, the personal invitation from the membership, obviously goes a long way to getting those additional businesses here. But we do mail this out to a pretty large mailing list every time we do host a downtown.
I do think, to Blake's point, that once that we have that work plan sketched out before it's finalized, it is worth doing another detailed circle back to each of those members, just to make sure that they are aware that that's where we are in the work plan. It'd be nice to hear some feedback that work plan is complete and in directionally where they'd like to see us go. And then also just get some commitment on areas of interest or focus where they would like to specifically be engaged. I know not everyone's going to be involved in every topic, but I think that asking for maybe some subgroup work plans, maybe there's a parking group or an infrastructure group or a marketing group or whatever that might look like based on those themes, would allow people to kind of dial in their engagement on topics that are important to them. Of course, we always welcome engagement on every single meeting, but that may not be realistic in today's world.
If I could chime in on Blake's comment there, I think it'd be great for this group to have the master list of those people that, were interested and actually raised their hand to be part of this committee, because I don't think everybody knows who even has any interest in it. So having that master list to each of us, I think would be very helpful.
Dan, is that something that you can share?
Yeah, I'd have to go back through and actually see who actually committed to being a member. When we started this, we sort of went through everybody's Rolodex, kind of got the list assembled, sent it out and said, here's, again, it was designed for an open house, and we sort of had to transition to the virtual setting. So we don't have hard commitments from a lot of that membership on that list, other than they're on the list until they keep telling me, take me off the list at this point. But I can go through that list and see what I can do to get that distributed out once that gets a little bit more firmed up.
I have had communication from a number of community members that are on that list, haven't been able to make it to a meeting, but certainly are kind of watching progress and kind of paying attention. So I do think it's important to keep that engagement, but it would be nice to, again, at least start identifying who's most interested in what topics so we can, target communications and make good use of everyone's time. And certainly a great topic as EDA members, as we're doing our BR&E and just regular outreach and conversations. Always have that recruiter hat on. All right, we are almost at the top of the hour. Anything further to come before us this evening? I will need a roll call vote to adjourn since we are in this wacky remote format. So not hearing anything else, and with Dan's note of our next meeting, that 4th Monday in November, we will see you all then. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
We've got a motion from Commissioner Erickson, and I hear a second
I'll
from
second.
Commissioner Huntosh. Excellent. And Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Roberts,
Aye.
Commissioner Finneman, Commissioner Erickson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lord,
Aye.
Commissioner Husnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Huntosh,
Aye.
and President Bain.
Aye. Thank you, everybody, for your attention this evening and participation. Great session again, much appreciated. And we are adjourned. Have a great evening.